Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to cover game 63 of a First Book of Morphy. We have a new endgame rule number 9, rooks belong behind passed pawns. Again, the author just mentions that this concept is so important that he devoted 2 rules to this concept, right? Putting your rooks behind passed pawns. So in this game, we have Paul Morphy with the black pieces against Daniel Harwitz. This was a third match game that took place in Paris in 1858. And Paul Morphy played the Dutch defense. So let's go ahead and go over the game. So we have d4, then f5. Again, here the author comments that a queen pawn opening by white gave Morphy his earliest excuse to advance his f-pawn to control the center. But f5 does not help black develop his pieces. c4 by white, e6. Knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop b4. The battle to control e4. White plays queen b3, developing with a threat. But the move does not wholly fit within the position. g4 will contribute to the 5 for e4, right? So again, here, remember the queen blocks the pawn here. So the author is saying g4. I don't know if that's a typo or not, but saying yeah, so g4, I guess, taking away this pawn here to help better control the e4 square. Queen b3, c5. Black doesn't want to block the pawn with knight f6. The knight can wait. So again, if knight c6, he blocks the c pawn on c7, and then plus white can just play e3, and this threat is kind of taken care of, right? So black wants to wait. So again, here now maybe it makes sense, right? Now knight c6, and this pawn is attacked twice. However, white prevents that with d5. So e5 on the board. Black's better center. And fluid pawns make up for his slight space disadvantage and lag in development. So again, this is kind of how you assess a position. You kind of see, okay, I have a better center. I have fluid pawns. I'm behind in development though. And white has a space advantage here. Okay. So e3 by white, castles by black, bishop d3, d6. Again, d6 locks up the position. Knight e2. Again, if knight f3, then that just runs into a pawn fork with e4, right? So knight e2 leaves f4 or f3 available. So now white can castle, and later on he can play either f3 or f4. h6. In a rather cramped position, black forces a trade on f6 to give his pieces some breathing room. Now again, if bishop h4, then we go into this variation, right? The bishop gets trapped. g5, bishop g3, now f4. Now here, the white will have to sacrifice his knight to in exchange for 2 pawns. E captures f4, e captures f4, knight captures f4, g captures f4, and then bishop captures f4. And again, now here, white is behind 1 point, right? So the knight is worth 3 points. And here, white traded the knight for 2 points, for 2 pawns. Okay? And of course, a weak pawn here, which, again, white could target later on. Instead, we have bishop captures f6, queen captures f6, a3, attacking the bishop on b4, bishop captures c3, queen captures c3, enabling the b pawn to fight on the queen side. Again, if knight captures c3, then might be puzzled about where the knight might go next. So it's something to think about when you're deciding which piece to capture with. When you think about which piece to capture with, you're going to have to decide, okay, what's the future? Where can this knight go after the capture? So if knight captures c3, okay, where is the knight going to go next after that? Okay, So d5 is blocked. Again, b5, the knight getting kicked out by a6. If knight captures here, then knight goes a4. Again, that seems like it's on the edge of the board. That's really not doing much. So if knight captures c3, it might have to go back, right? So that's why white decides to capture with the queen. Now the b pawn is free, and which is what white wants to do, to play b4 and break on the queen side. Black plays queen g6, attacking g2 and clearing, and now the f6 square is open for the knight, right? So now the knight can go to d7, then in the future it could go to f6. White castles, knight d7. Then we have b4. The opening won't be over until white finds a file for his rooks. He looks to the queen side where he has more space. So black plays b6, then f3 by white. Again, possible threats here are g5 or e4. So black plays h5, stopping g4. White plays bishop c2. A diagonal opens for the black bishop. And black bears down on the king side after e4, f4. Right. So e4, f4. So again, that means that the king side could get locked up, right? Because again, as I said previously, white wants to play on the queen side with this pawn breaking open the position. So any pawn move by black is going to be met by either e4 in this case, or if black plays e4, then f4, right? Closing the position. Now here, again, the bishop could go here, and black's bishop can also go to b7 or a6. So black plays bishop b7. This development makes more sense if black could knock down the d5 pawn, but here is defended. Again, black chose this because it is the fastest development and the rooks are now connected. Knight f6. Okay, so knight f6 and then bishop d7 leaves the bishop with a clear diagonal. The bishop also finds good work on a6, where it attacks the base of the pawn chain. So black could have also gone bishop a6 to attack this base, but again, you kind of have to see what if black plays bishop b5, then now the bishop returns to b7. So black chose bishop b7. So now white plays bishop a4, queen f7. So here black realized that the king side will lock up. So his queen moved back to the queen side where the fight will take place. Bishop captures d7, queen captures d7, b captures c5, b captures c5. So now we have this file open. f4, an important move, holding black's kingside motion in place and freezing the black pawns. On freezing the black pawns on white squares where they can block the bishop. Okay, so again, if e4, then we have these two pawns here on the light squares that will eventually block the bishop in an endgame. Well, I mean, also in the middle game, right? Because these two from white block the bishop, and then white's own pawns on the light squares also block the light squared bishop. So e4. And again, if e captures f4, knight captures f4, would improve two white pieces for would improve white's two pieces, right? So this is some kind of calculation exercises. So you gotta see in your mind, okay, what happens if I take? Okay, so if I take and then knight takes, now the queen has an open diagonal, and now the knight is attacking all these squares, right? h5, g6, e6 is white has more threats. So you have to calculate this in your mind and see that, okay, this is not good. Therefore, we're going to close the position with e4. So rook a to b1 attacking the bishop. Bishop f6, rook f to c1, queen a4. Knight g3, the threat to h5 wins a tempo for white, who uses the time to send the knight over to guard c4. So, okay, so h4, and now white will bring the bishop to the knight to d2 to guard c4. Rook a to b8. If there is just one open file on the chessboard, the fight will happen here. Knight d2, again guarding c4. Rook b6, a strong move, threatening to double the rooks with rook f to b8. And if white captures, black's a7 pawn moves to b6 and b5 to attack the c4 and d5 structure, right? Which is also good for black. If white rook takes, then a captures on b6, and now black can push his pawn forward. So that's what happens in the game. Rook captures b6, a captures b6, queen b3. The biggest threat white could make, while a recapture on b3 brings a piece forward. So this is good for white because it brings a knight forward. b5, c captures b5, bishop captures b5, knight a5. Rook a8 attacking the knight, knight b7 attacking d6. Rook a6 attacking again a3 and d6. Rook c3 defending a3 and e3. King f8. The king must be active in the ending, and the specific plan is to play king e7 to protect the d pawn so that the rook can attack. Rook b6 is an ineffective threat, for white wants to play knight d8 anyway, because again white wants to play knight d8 to knight e6 and have an outpost for the knight. While the black rook releases its pressure against a3 and loses its mobility too. So he's saying, yeah, so in this case, there is no b6 is not a good move, right? Because a knight already wants to go here, so you're just kind of playing into white's plan. Plus, if you play b6, now this pawn is not attacked anymore, and the rook is blocked by the bishop. So we have knight d8, bishop d7. Again, in case if the knight goes e6 or c6, the bishop is ready to cover these squares and take. Rook b3 probably wants to go rook d7, attack the bishop. So king e7. Now white goes rook b8 to defend the knight, because it was attacked here by the king. Rook b8, c4. Passed pawns must be pushed. King f2, c3, king e2, and rook captures a3. So again, notice that there is a huge difference between making this capture now rather than 3 moves earlier. Black c pawn is far enough advanced so that the rook can get behind it. So the author is saying that after this move, if black plays rook a6, then he might have to move his rook back again and get it behind the c5 pawn. Or the rook can stay on a3, and now black pushes the pawn forward. However, white can go b7 and then c7 to get behind the passed pawn. Right? And again, this pawn push perfectly lines up with... Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. Knight c6, bishop captures c6, d captures c6, and c2. Right, so this position again leads to the thumbnail, right, of this video. Again, what would you play in this position? This is like a tactic, right? King d2, and then now as black, what do you play here? Well, again, you sacrifice the rook, right? Position of the thumbnail, by moving his rook behind passed pawns of 2 different colors, black makes a double threat. So this is a nice move, a beautiful. Well, it's a lovely move. That's what the author calls it, a lovely move. When I first played this, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is a cool trick. So if king captures c3, then the pawn queens to a queen. So now we have a queen, and now king has to go king d4. Queen captures on c6, and now the queen gets to go to work and attack the rook or start attacking the pawns, right? And it's pretty much game over for white. So white goes king c1, preventing the pawn from queening. Rook c6, rook b3, king f6. Rook a3, g5. Black can trade pawns to make space on the king side for an invasion by the king. So what black wants is f captures on g5, king captures g5, and then to push f4, e captures f4, king captures f4, and then black can push his e pawn up to make another threat. And then if not, then black just wants to get his king inside this position, and maybe take a pawn or two, and then once it's inside here, find a way to start attacking the pawns. So g3 by white, h captures g3, h captures g3, g captures f4, g captures f4, and then king g6. Again, black's plan is to go here and start attacking this pawn. Rook a5. So now white is saying, if you go king h5, I want to take f5 with check. Okay, black goes rook c5. White's hit on f5 prevented king h5, and the best defense is a counterattack. Now white must allow the black rook to penetrate c3, or the king to go to h5 and g4. Now again, if rook captures c5, then d captures c5 is an easy pawn ending. So rook a6, rook c3, counterattacking each other. Rook captures d6, king h5, rook d2, king g4, rook g2 check, king f3, rook g5, rook c5. Black is careful to the end. So again, in the end game, the thing is with the end game, if you make a mistake, you can go from winning to losing. You can go from winning to a draw. So you have to really be careful with these end games. Rook h5, king captures e3, rook h4, and king f3. And now here is where white resigned. So now with king f3, black is going to push e3, e2, e1. If rook checks, then again, black could just capture here on f4, and then now black has two passed pawns, and he's going to roll the pawns forward to queen, right? And most likely what's going to happen is he'll use one queen to sacrifice and then capture either with the rook or the other pawn, or with the king, and then checkmate the white king. So again, the to me, when I first played this game, and I've gone over this book twice. I think 2 years ago, the first time I read it. Again, I thought also at the time, remember this move was pretty cool. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Make sure you like and subscribe.